is a source of healthy plants and therefore healthy people. If you're not looking after your soil by giving it the food and moisture it needs, you will not have good crops and therefore you will not have good healthy people. The soil is home to a whole galaxy of soil life, millions and millions of microorganisms working together to form what we call a soil food web. Without this soil food web, we cannot have healthy soil. Compost is food for your soil. There are many different ways of making compost. However, all compost piles will have one thing in common, and that's their carbon and nitrogen ingredients. Carbon materials are usually recognisable because they'll be dry and brown. Materials that are really commonly used include straw or hay, wood chips, sawdust. Ingredients which are commonly used for nitrogen include fresh grass clippings, animal manure and food scraps. Today we're using grass clippings, which are a little bit older than we would have liked. However, we're going to vamp it up a bit with some more animal manure as well. Who here likes lasagna? Yeah! So today we're going to make some compost lasagna. Ooh. What that means is we're going to get some straw and some grass clippings and horse manure and layer it exactly like lasagna. And then we're going to cook it over a few weeks. Compost is food for all the plants. And so when you put compost in the garden, the plant's roots go down and eat it all up. And they grow into really strong plants, which means that you can grow into really strong people if you eat the plants. Strong. Today we're going to make what's called a hot compost using green grass clippings collected from the school grounds, a mixture of straw and hay and some aged horse manure. The water is really important. What that's doing is it's feeding the whole compost into each other and it's going to create enough moisture for the compost to heat up. If you have no moisture, your compost is going to stay really dry and it won't heat up. For your compost pile to generate enough heat to break down your materials, it needs to be at least 1 metre square. If it's too small, it'll just sit there and be cold. If it's too big, it's going to get hard to turn. The ideal temperature for a hot compost is around 60 to 65 degrees. At this temperature, any weed seeds or bad bugs, known as pathogens, are being killed off. If your compost pile hasn't heated up around 5 to 7 days, that's when you might need to turn your pile, add more moisture and more nitrogen to give it an extra kick. If your pile is getting really smelly, that's when you really want to start turning it quickly because it's probably getting anaerobic. That means it's got too much moisture in there, maybe too much nitrogen and not enough air. So turn that pile and add some carbon materials in there. So here we are a couple of weeks later. The compost pile has already been turned once and today we're going to turn it back again. This is just to make sure that all the materials have been cooked really evenly and well. If I put my hand all the way in here, it's really nice and warm. You pull out something from the middle and you can start to see that it's breaking down really nicely. It's still got a fair while to go though, but it's on its way. So you can see we've got some different coloured bays here, some red and green. And that's just so we can communicate really easily to people what we're working with. The red symbolises that you're not allowed to go near those bays. And that's because we're cooking compost piles in them. We'll rotate one pile between the two until it's ready to be used. The green compost bay means that we can have our food scraps in there, essentially building a nice slow compost pile. So the kids know not to come near the red bays while the compost is cooking. So when you're turning your compost, you want to make sure you put the stuff that's currently on the outside in the inside of the pile. Give it a turn at being nice and cooked. Get it heated up so it can cook down well. You want to put the stuff on the inside on the outside. So lots of people will ask, how often do you have to actually turn your compost? This will depend on how quickly it heats up basically. Lots of people will say 3 to 5 days, which is a really good ballpark. But make sure you can just put your arm in there. If it's nice and hot, you'll know that it's ready to be turned. If it's not quite hot enough, just let it have a few more days.